So today, the subject I am going to cover is Varna, Jati, Caste, and what the Bhagavad Geeta has to say about it. Before I begin, I'd like to state that the division of labor in society, and even to the extent the social hierarchy, is present in all countries throughout the world. For those of you who are skeptical, I recommend them to read the book, The French Lieutenant's Woman, where he describes how the English had their own caste system of gentlemen who did not need to work and were financially independent, and they spent their lives in trying to improve themselves and their minds, corresponding to what one might say is the British idea of Brahmin. The soldiers who were the rulers, who were on the battlefield creating their wealth. A good example would be perhaps Clive of India, because he created great wealth for himself by coming to India as a warrior. Then were the Vaishyas, or the shopkeepers in Great Britain. In fact, Great Britain was known as a nation of shopkeepers. And then those who were the workingsmen. And they formed their own guilds of barbers guild, the plumbers guild, and so on and so forth. They had their own association. But what is important to know is that this stratification of society and the division of labor therein is not unique to any one country. It is present all over the world. The concept of the division of society into four categories is described in the Rigveda. And in the hymns of the Rigveda, it begins by explaining that from the head of Brahma, the creator, from the head of Brahma, the creator, came the Brahmins. From the arms and shoulders of Brahma came the Kshatriyas. From the trunk of Brahma, there came the Vaishyas. And from the lower limbs of Brahma came the Shudras. Similarly, this has been elaborated upon until 1850, and very abstruse and little known text and almost never followed text, which was known as the Manusmriti. This is how it existed. But we have to understand that the divisions of society had already taken place before 1850. And what had happened was that the nation itself, the subcontinent itself, originated from a fragment of the continent Africa. And this fragment of the continent, known as Pangaea, in a continental drift, moved across the globe and came and impacted the lower part of Asia. And this crunch of Pangaea into South Asia caused the Himalayas to appear as a result of the collision. So a good part of the population had African antecedents. There were others who came from Southeast Asia. There were yet others who came from the Middle East, perhaps from Iran and Iraq and many of the other places. And all of these came to form the population of what we call as India. Because there were so many people and so many different communities, so many different tribes, so many different jatis. Jati means by birth. And not only by birth, but also by endogamy. That is, they married into each other's community, into their own community. So this endogamy and this transmission of jati by birth led to what consisted, and even consists now, of roughly 3,000 divisions. The word caste is not an Indian word. The word casta comes from Portuguese. And just to use it because it is commonly used, there are 3,500 jatis and there are 24 or 25,000 sub-jatis. So you can imagine how many varieties of people there are in this country. Not only are there 3,500 jatis, and not only are there 24,000 or more sub-jatis, all according to the profession they follow and the customs they follow and the endogamy they follow, they also vary according to their geographical location. Every 500 miles, the language or the dialect changes. Every 500 miles, you will find that the form of worships change. And there are numerous differences in this population. In 1857, Indians fought the first War of Independence, the 1857 War of Independence. And when they fought this first War of Independence, the British realized it was so important to bring about a division between the Indian people so that through this division of the Indian people, they could divide and rule, they could divide and govern, they could divide and classify, and they could divide and subjugate. And to create this, they made an effort to use the Manusmriti in the beginning as the template. Remember, Manusmriti was not widely applicable, widely followed, or even known to most of the population of India. But some Indologists got together in the British, among the British, and they decided, why don't we make it simpler? Instead of 3,500 jatis and 24,000 or 25,000 sub-jatis, why don't we simply divide them into 4 according to Manusmriti? Of course, the Rigvedic hymn was yet to be translated into English, maybe about 15 years after this British decision. But when they wanted to do this, they found it was almost impossible. Because people who were asked to do the census and classify these jatis into these 4 divisions of Brahman, Vaishya, Kshatriya, Shudra, came back and said it's not possible. There's no such clear division because these jatis are fairly elastic in their movement. They move from one profession to another. They move from being priests and they move to becoming soldiers, and then soldiers become farmers, and farmers become soldiers, and those who are, you might consider laborers, they become kings and they become nobility. So it is a very elastic, these jatis are very elastic. So why don't we classify them according to government diktat? Keep reservations for Christians in certain communities under this caste division, and then let us rule by dividing India. Of course, the first division was between Hindu and Muslim, because in the war of 1857, Hindus and Muslims were together. So their division became, let us divide the Hindus, let us divide the Muslims, let us divide the Sikhs, let us divide the Jains, let us divide various Buddhists, and this Indians, the Hindus themselves, let us divide these 3,500 jatis and 25,000 subjatis, let us divide them into the four castes. Because this scripture, which is contained within the Hindu sacred books, although it was very, very, very abstruse, unknown, and hardly applied, except by a small group of people, right? Why don't we apply this across the country? So how many people actually fell under this division? In actual fact, the division of Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, the people who are following this according to Jati, were not more than 12% of India's population. And the British also in their census demonstrated that the number of Brahmins were less than 3% of India's population. But nonetheless, they classified large number of communities as belonging to forward, large number of communities as belonging to backward, and then they divided them into Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. So I would like to point out to you, even before we reach the Bhagavad Gita, that when we talk about the Rig Veda, or even when we talk about the Manusmriti, the divisions were originally meant not to be an external labeling of individuals, but it was supposed to be an internal quest for understanding what was their Swadharma. There is a concept many of you will have studied, the concept of self-actualization. Self-actualization is that when all your primary and basic needs have been met, and having met all your basic needs, now you aspire to express the best that is there within you, what is natural within you. And through its expression in a spirit of sacrifice and devotion, one then attains silence of the mind and union with God. This concept of self-actualization in Western literature is known as Maslow's hierarchy. And Maslow's hierarchy pointed out that people should have their basic needs fulfilled, their emotional needs fulfilled, their intellectual needs fulfilled, and then they should work in a manner that gives them complete peace of mind, so that the work that they're engaging in itself becomes a meditation. So this classification of Brahmana, Vaishya, Kshatriya, Shudra, as we will see in the Bhagavad Gita, was never according to birth or jati, though it might have been corrupted by the Indologists who wanted to divide and rule. Two things they did. One is they divided India by dividing Hindus from Muslims and from Sikhs and from Jains and Buddhists. But they also decided to divide the Hindu people according to caste, which they created and they established. Are you surprised to hear all this? It's nothing to be surprised about. This is well established. You can just pick up your phone and you can just Google caste system in India, BBC, and you will find the article by Sanjoy Chakravarti. And those of you who are interested in reading more and further about this can also find information on Varna, Jati and Caste by Rajiv Malhotra and Vijaya Vishwanathan. And you will get an idea how caste was created by the British. It was made into a plaster caste by the British because it was wedded to Jati. And this plaster caste, when it encases a limb, actually kills the limb. Because if any of you have, God forbid, experienced a fracture or seen a fracture patient, when he is put into a plaster cast, when that plaster cast is removed, what do you find? You find that the muscles are shrunken, that the limb has become weak. And this is what the Britishers wanted to do to society. And they created this concept or idea, which was really an ideal, a fantasy, which was meant for one's inner development, not for outer labeling. And because of this inner development, which Bhagavad Gita stresses on, please try to understand that this Ved Vyas, who is the writer of the Mahabharata, would have been considered by the British as an outcast because his father, while being Parashar Muni, a sage, Brahmana, had married a fisherwoman, which the British had labeled as a lower backward class. And therefore, he would have been an outcast. Similarly, if you look at the author of Ramayana, he belonged to a backward class, a depressed class, and he was a thug. So under these circumstances, one would expect that they would be outcasts forever. But no, the Bhagavad Gita points out very, very clearly. And what does it point out? The Bhagavad Gita points out Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishyam, Shudram cha Parantapa Karmani Pravaviktani Swabhava Prabhavair Gune. It says the duties of Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas and Shudras are distributed according to their qualities, in accordance with the work they perform and their inner qualities or gunas, not by birth. That is my addition. So, elsewhere Krishna says, Chatur Varnam Maya Shrishtam Guna Karma Vibhagashah. Krishna says, I have created these four divisions. I have created these four divisions of society. And these four divisions of society are Brahmana, Vaishya, Kshatriya, Shudra. And I have created them not by birth, but I have created them by the nature of their inner qualities and the type of work they perform. So what did the British do? First, they applied this all across the country. even though there were protests from all over, from the census takers, from the British administrators, that it's difficult, it's impossible. How do we apply this division of these four castes across society? There are 3,500 jatis and 25,000 sub-jatis. How do you want me to apply these four divisions? But they were forced to do that. And not only were they forced to do that, the best way to destroy a nation is to divide its people. And after dividing its people, the next thing is that you should provide scarcity. So when you divide people and you remove the resources, which is what the British did, because every year they were taking food, everything away. Forget about Kohinoor diamonds and wealth and gold and etc. Even food, the Bengal famine, which is very famous, was entirely due to shipping food away from Bengal because the British required it. Similarly, every year in India, there used to be famines. And using these reservations, they gave a few jobs of the British to certain castes that they favored, and therefore set about greater conflict between the different castes, who as Jatis had lived very peacefully. Jatis lived very peacefully in India before. There were 3,500 Jatis and 25,000 sub-Jatis. But very often Hindus would give their eldest son to become a Sikh. Very often there would be intermarriage between Hindus and Sikhs. Very often there would be intermarriage between Jains and Vaishnavas. So in this way, there was so much flexibility. There was so much unity. There was so much, shall we say, ability to change one's social position in one's hierarchy, to change the nature of their jobs. All this was available. But the British came and ossified that, and the British came and made it by creating scarcity. They set one against the other, and they produced. In fact, the word untouchable was never present anywhere before British times. The word untouchable came about for the first time somewhere around 1820. Sorry, 1920. So you can understand that many of these things that they are using as a stick to beat us, saying that Hindus and the caste system, Hindus and untouchability, these are all creations of the British. And not just the division, which they did administratively, creation of jobs, creation of different reservations in different things, but they also created scarcity, causing them to fight within each other. Which is why after the 1857 war, they had taken a vow to divide and conquer, to divide and rule, to divide and govern. But Krishna says that the divisions of Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra are based upon guna and karma, upon your inner qualities and the nature of the work that you perform, not the jati to which you belong. You may belong to any jati, but you will perform those qualities, you will express those qualities and perform that work which will be ideally suited to your nature. So that through the expression of that kind of work and the expression of those qualities, you will attain self-actualization, union with God. Shamo damas tapa saucham shantir arjavam evacha jnanam vijnanam ashtikyam brahma karma svabhavajam. tranquility, restraint, austerity, purity, patience, integrity, transparency, knowledge, wisdom, religiosity. These are all the intrinsic qualities of the Brahmana. Krishna then goes on to point out the qualities of the gunas of the Kshatriya. Shauryam tejo dhritir daksham yuddhe chapya apalayanam danam ishvara bhavascha kshatram karma swabhavajam. Valor, courageousness, strength, fortitude, skill in wielding weapons. That kind of resolve that never allows you to retreat from battle. Large-heartedness in charity, in giving. Leadership abilities. These are the natural qualities for a person who is a Kshatriya. Krishi Gaurakshavanijam Vaishya Karma Swabhavajam Paricharya Atmakam Karma Shudrasyapi Swabhavajam. So agriculture, dairy farming, commerce, trade, these are the natural qualities of those who are Vaishyas. Whereas those who are happy engaging in work and service, this is the natural quality of the Shudra. Now it's very important to understand that these divisions of society are not according to the jatis, but they're according to the inner nature of that individual and the type of work that he performs. In many Puranas, including the Bhagavad Puran, there are examples of a king who had some sons who were Brahmins, some sons who were Vaishyas, some sons who were Kshatriyas, and some sons who were Shudras. So they were all children of the same king. But although they were all children of the same king, according to their qualities and the nature of work that they were attracted to performing, they belong to different castes. So a father can have 4 sons. One son can be Brahminical, one son can be a Kshatriya, a Khatri, one son can be a Vaishya, and one son can be a Shudra. It depends on the nature of the person and the kind of work that he is attracted to performing. Don't also look at them according to their profession. Even according to the profession, you find people who are naturally attracted to performing different kinds of work. Let me, for example, give the medical profession, which I know best. Those who are Brahminical in nature and who are doctors, one of them may choose to, in fact, engage in research, in teaching, and also in clinical work. So he will be found in the university, he may be found in a research laboratory, but that is the work that he will be naturally inclined to perform. And that is a work which, while performing, he will find full expression of his inner self. And therefore, he will find self-actualization. And by performing it in a spirit of sacrifice and devotion, he will attain union with God. Then another doctor who has the qualities of a Kshatriya. Right from college, he may become a student leader. He may aspire to become the head of the association, the postgraduate association to which he belongs. He may become head of the Indian Medical Association. He may want to become a member of the Medical Council of India. He will want to become a leader. He will want to guide. He will engage in politics. These are the qualities of a doctor who is a Kshatriya. Then there may be a person with the qualities of a Vaishya who becomes a doctor. And the one with the qualities of a Vaishya who becomes a doctor may be happy, having his own nursing home, having his own pathology laboratory, having his own diagnostic center with radiology and etc., etc. Because all these are but qualities of how to earn wealth. So therefore, to earn wealth, the Vaishya will be attracted to these kinds of professions. And one who is happy doing his work from 9 to 5, one who is happy to do whatever work is given to him, doesn't want too much responsibility, does not want to take the risk of earning on his own in the world. Such a person will become a salaried doctor working from 9 to 5. And this is also a very happy state of existence for him because he is attracted naturally to the performance of service. And this is what the entire profession runs on. So Krishna goes on to point out that everyone should seek out his own Swadharma. Seek out your own Swadharma. If you have a job and you have the natural inclination to do business, and you can identify the needs of people in the marketplace, and you know you want to learn how to go and do business, please do it. Doesn't matter what profession you belong to. Similarly, if you want to take a simple job, risk-free, be there from 9 to 5, that's also a great thing that you can do. If you want to do politicking and become leadership and you want to become a statesman in your profession or in your field, certainly do it. That is the best thing that you can do for your nature. And for one who is engaged in research, in teaching, in study, such a person should take to those professions, those jobs in the profession, which will help him to become completely happy and fulfilled. So Krishna further warns that one should not, think that one profession is superior to another or inferior to another. In chapter 18, text 46, Krishna says, Yatah pravritir bhutanam yena sarvamidam tatam swakarmana abhyarchaya siddhim vindati manava. Each one by performing his God-given duties according to his inner nature, working in a spirit of sacrifice and worship to the Lord who is all pervading. Each individual, whoever he is, will attain perfection. So it doesn't matter whether one is a priest waving the arti, whether one is a laborer cleaning the temple with his broom. It doesn't matter whether one is a Vaishya who is acquiring wealth in the world or a Kshatriya who is leading as a statesman and as a leader. It doesn't matter. Each person, by performing their God-given duties in a spirit of sacrifice to that all-pervading Lord, will attain perfection. So no one is higher, no one is lower. Mam hi partha vyapashritya tepi syu papayonaya striyo vaishyas tata shudras tepi yanti paramgati. So it doesn't matter whether you're a woman, a man, whether you're a Vaishya, Shudra, it doesn't matter. When you perform your duties in a spirit of sacrifice and devotion to this all-pervading Lord, you will attain perfection. But very importantly, he says, Shreyan Swadharma Viguna Paradharmat Swanushtitat Swabhava Niyatam Karma Kurvan Napnoti Kilbisham. He says it is better to do your own dharma imperfectly than to do another's dharma perfectly. Because by doing activities and duties that are congruent to your nature, which God has given you, a person will never incur sin. So it is so important to understand that this division in Bhagavad Gita is not according to jati, it is not a caste, it is an inner quality which attracts you to a kind of work, and in the performance of that work, you attain self-actualization, because doing it in a spirit of sacrifice to the all-pervading Lord, you will attain spiritual perfection. This is the message of the Bhagavad Gita. And this is its definition of what is Brahmana, Vaishya, Kshatriya, Shudra. It is not a means to label another individual. It is not a means to label another community or jati. It is not a means to create a hierarchy in society. It is a guide to yourself by studying the qualities that lie inside of you, within you. That if you perform your own swadharma, even if it is imperfect, still it is something that you will lead you to perfection, spiritual perfection. So therefore, the Bhagavad Gita is very clear. There is a big difference between what jatis have been and what British tried to make into their divisions of caste, including the divisions of untouchability and their divisions of, shall we say, uh, scarcity, which led to conflict between the caste that they created and labeled. But this is an intrinsic understanding of what is your inner nature, and this in turn guides you how to perform it in the spirit of sacrifice to please God. So with this, I will pause. If there are any questions, please feel free to ask me.
Thank you, sir, for today's lecture. There's a question from the viewers. Does your karma from previous lives influence the caste or jati that you are born into?
See, please try to understand that the purpose of the Bhagavad Gita is to bust the theory of karma. Bhagavad Gita is a karma busting book. Arjun falls into this problem of to fight or not to fight, to do his duty or not to do his duty, because his mind is boggled by the fear of what karma will befall him. And the whole Bhagavad Gita is to teach you, don't worry about karma, act in a spirit of sacrifice to please God, and you will find that you will incur no karma at all. Yagnartharth karmano nyatra loko yam karma bandhana tadartham karma kaunteya mukta sangha samachara. So Bhagavad Gita is a karma busting book. It teaches you how to transcend karma. But yes, everything that you have done in the past, including past lives, is the karma which determines your present life. I hope that answer is clear.
Yes, sir. Thank you for answering the question. And there's one more question. So should one aim to be part of a particular caste or jati, or should you do what comes naturally to you?
You should do what comes naturally to you. And as I've explained to you in great detail, the qualities that you possess internally and the nature of work that you are attracted to naturally will determine what you should do to attain spiritual perfection. If it matches what your parents are doing, if it matches what your jati is doing, wonderful. If it doesn't, don't let it restrain you. Because your obligation is to your inner self. I hope that's clear.
Yes, sir. Thank you for answering the question. And that's all the questions we have for today. So,
All right. Hari Om, Jai Shri Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.